Cool. Tonight on the A-Zone, we're going to talk about marksmanship fundamentals and how they relate to recent events. And we're also going to discuss technique experimentation, when and how that relates to different matches that you shoot, if it does at all. So to start us off, Calvin, I think this was your idea to talk about marksmanship fundamentals, so I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay, so hear me out, guys. I think the most important aspect of practical shooting is being able to hit the targets. Agree or disagree?
Wait, say that one more time?
Gun handling.
Gun handling is more important than hitting the targets?
Looking cool.
According to IG, it is.
Yeah, it's just fast reloads, man.
Yeah, just you need to look cool.
Yeah. No, I find that there's like I don't know, it's a cultural thing or maybe like new people getting into shooting, they don't work on the most important part, which is actually hitting stuff. And maybe it's because it's like the least sexy thing to work on, or it's the most difficult if you have like no coaching or don't know what the fuck you're doing. So I feel like people work things backwards. They do all the easy stuff often, and then they don't work on hitting targets, both close and far range, like shooting really, really tiny groups of close, and then like hitting acceptable groups far away.
And so you mean doing this at like a practical pace, I'm assuming you're talking about. You're not talking about like bullseye pace, right?
Man, even at like the FUD ranges, the one shot per second places, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of people pushing like trying to shoot accurately.
What do you guys
really?
What do you guys consider to be like a practical range and pace? Is it like 40 yards in 15 seconds or something?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. I think maybe all C-zone hits at 50 yards would be a pretty good like accuracy standard. Like C-zone hits are better.
Is that the next drill?
Yeah, I think that would be relatively tough to do at like any sort of practical pace. Like that's a good standard, I think. That would take
and
some
even
practice.
a slow fire, that's respectable.
Yeah.
You know, like you're obviously not gonna win any bullseye matches, but like you'll probably be better than any rando at the public range.
Yeah, and I guess so. Since we're talking about recent events, this has at least some relation to practicalness. So I think my opinion would be like if you're gonna practice this, I think it would be almost more relevant not to practice it slow fire and to not necessarily practice it rapid fire, but like kind of the way you shoot practical accuracy, where it's like you press the trigger immediately. You're not like standing there holding your breath, slowly squeezing the trigger and letting it surprise you.
Well, I mean, at this point, you're pretty much talking about, hey, what is your sights telling you? Can you accurately shoot at what the sights are telling you?
Yeah.
So, are the sights like in the center of the intended target? Pull the trigger, hit, sights return, hit, bang, bang, bang.
So if I were gonna go shoot this and then probably not be in the C zone at 50 yards all the time, what types of mistakes am I probably making, do you guys think? If someone were gonna go try to do this.
Frontside focus. Sorry, I went there first. I'm sorry. Sorry, fuck.
So I think that's a good one though, is maybe focal point. And I think this one could be up for debate.
Yeah, it's
Calvin's
far
over there
enough to where you might actually have to use a frontside focus.
Yeah, I think you could. For me personally, knowing myself, I know I would do better if I were target focused, but like I think this would probably fall like kind of 50-50 maybe, depending on who you ask at that distance for like that difficulty of a shot.
What are you talking about? I have a dot. I have no idea what this frontside focus is.
Okay, yeah. Well, so if you're shooting irons, if you're shooting a dot, then yeah, you should be target focused. But
I think legitimately one of the hardest things might be, I'm with Matt on this one. I got like a 15-yard zero, and like my dot's like a million miles above the barrel, so it's like generically you'd be like, oh, it's a 2-inch hold. It's like, oh shit, maybe it's like a 6 or an 8-inch hold because I don't know how fucking high that thing is.
Yeah, knowing your holdover would definitely help.
Well,
yeah,
so
what calculators you can use.
Wait, you mean you can't just use the velocity and drop numbers on the back of the box, Calvin?
I mean, you probably could.
Well, what's Koi's box?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
Yeah, good point.
That's nice.
Yeah, probably shooting 9 major out of a Glock 48.
So what comes to mind would be like if I were gonna go shoot this, that I would probably screw this up. It would be like a grip thing. Like I know I think I would have like unwanted tension in my firing hand as I was pressing the trigger, and that would probably throw shots. So like if I were gonna go practice this, I would be like consciously trying not to tense up my right hand.
Yeah,
In
that's probably
addition
the
to like
biggest
aiming
thing people
point.
screw up.
This is probably the for me personal weakness, personal strength under 50 yards, but personal weakness at 50 yards or further. I'm really good at like that fixed pound trigger pull, and like spend almost no time, actually 0 time spent on like what do you call it, Kevin? Like slow fire trigger press, that kind of thing. That would be like pretty effective, I think, at 50 yards.
Oh, squeezing through.
Yeah.
Like this, like
Very
incremental
bullseye.
pressure trigger press.
Yeah, like bullseye trigger prep stuff. Yeah, exactly. So I have no idea because
So that's where like you slowly add more pressure to the trigger pull until it eventually breaks.
Yeah, like 99% of what we shoot, right? Like USPSA stuff, like maybe out to like 30, 40 yards even. I think we've seen that like area matches. Like you're still just gonna roll the trigger, right? Like
No, it's like in all seriousness, you do. Or at least I do.
What's that?
Like in all, I know you were like laughing, but in all seriousness, I don't ever find myself like prepping or carefully pressing the trigger in a match
Me neither.
or in practice.
Yeah,
even.
it doesn't happen in the match. It only.
Ooh, Calvin froze. I'm gonna take a screenshot. Oh, he's back. Damn it.
What?
You
Are you there?
froze up, dude.
You didn't freeze. It's
Oh, okay. Hold on.
fine.
Yeah, you're in and it bricked itself.
And so this is kind of a related question. So the whole like trigger prep and like the slowly increasing pressure to the trigger and letting it surprise you, like that whole way of pressing the trigger, I guess. Is there more to that than just kind of trying to trick your hand into not tensing up? Like that's just kind of a technique to make sure that you don't tense up the rest of your firing hand, right?
I think primarily it's more of like a mental safety blanket. It's like, I feel a little bit unsure, let me take a little bit extra time kind of thing.
And maybe it gives you a little bit of time to like perfect the sight alignment if needed, or I'm not sure.
It's straight up. It's like, hey, do I feel safe about pulling this trigger onto this piece of the target that I want to shoot? That's really all it is.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know why it's taught. It was just one of those things that was taught.
Because realistically, I mean, it's not like you're actually moving the gun with your trigger finger and like, oh, if I pull the trigger slower, it's going to not move the gun. It's like you're moving the gun with the rest of your hand. So I assume that's got to be some kind of like mental thing to trick your hand into not doing that when you pull the trigger and just isolating the trigger finger.
Well, I mean, it's assuming that the variable of like everything else in your hands or whatever else in your body is not moving.
Yeah, so I would think if you have, if you are aimed properly and confirming your sights are dot enough and you're gripping correctly, then it's just a matter of not, pulling the trigger with your whole hand at that distance. I say that I'm
one
not,
side picture,
yeah,
right, Coy?
I'm not good at shooting at that distance, but that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I think another thing people kind of will hang them up is the sight picture itself, the wobble zone, like seeing the sights move, whether it's iron sights or a dot, and that's just like a natural movement. And one thing I stole from Larry Vickers and I demonstrate for people at like 5 yards, I'll literally move my gun. I'll put my gun at you guys like this, and I'm gonna fire, and I'll fire like 5 rounds or whatever, moving my gun like this in a circle. And you'd think that you wouldn't be able to hit anything like this, but all it does is just makes like a 1.5, 2 inch group at 5 yards with that much movement. So there's no way you're moving anywhere near that much when you're shooting normally. So that kind
Yeah.
of tells you, like, as long as you have like a halfway decent sight picture, a really good grip, and you can pull a trigger without making the gun move, like it's gonna be within a decent margin of where you're aiming.
Yeah, I agree with that. That kind of relates to one of the reasons I like shooting, like it's kind of counterintuitive, but I like shooting target focused on harder shooting, is because as your gun kind of naturally wobbles around a little bit, I feel like it if you're focused on a point on the target rather than the sight, you'll wobble around that point on the target. And at least for me, if I focus on the front sight, I just kind of wobble around like the entire target rather than where I'm actually trying to aim. Like it doesn't kind of get sucked into that one point like it does if I'm target focused. In other
I've
words,
never tried target focus that far away.
You can do it on shorter distance because I like a lot of ranges don't have that far, but you could do it on like shorter distances with like obviously smaller targets. But I don't know, it just helps me because like I feel like I drift around on the target a lot if I'm front sight focused, and it bites me in the butt. Like you can see behind me, it bites me in the butt on tuxedos. Because if I'm looking at the sight, just a little bit of wobble on like a 15-yard tux, and you're in the black. And so that's how I figured out that this was a problem for me, was the stupid tux targets.
Yeah, something needs to be trained out for sure if you're like me and have been taught front sight focus all your life. Because I still fall into that trap when, like, I guess I'm under pressure, under time pressure.
I do too. It takes like conscious effort to train that. Like it's not a natural thing if you're like a long time iron sight shooter.
So one of the other things our guy did is that he fired a lot of his shots from a barricade first, and then moved up closer. Did we ever shoot off barricades in USPSA? Is that a thing? I don't know if it's ever a thing.
Not really.
It's such an edge case, right? There's going to be the odd time where some MD like wants to wrap a target really far behind some kind of like vision barrier, and you're gonna like just end up touching the wall all the way through. But I don't know that you ever like end up doing like gun support as much as just like you're putting the side of your body right up against that wall or something.
Like incidentally touching it rather than resting against it.
No, I mean it's definitely intentional, right? But it's like not for like recoil stability. It's more for like so you don't fall down stability. I
got you.
This, but like where like your bottom half of your body is like behind the wall, but like your full shoulders are on the other side of the wall, like wrapped around the wall. Like I'm sure you guys can think of like matches you've had to do that before.
We had one stage that was kind of like that this past weekend, actually.
Oh, was there?
Some pretty tough leans. I wasn't supporting myself on the wall, but you were kind of contorting yourself around the wall like that a little bit.
Yeah, that one was a fun stage at least.
I actually liked it, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed in slow fire, never tried this on a timer, but I've noticed when I try to rest my gun on something, I actually shoot worse groups than when I'm just shooting freestyle. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
I could see that if it's not something you practice all the time. Like I feel like because the gun will behave a little differently if it's like braced up against something. So if you don't practice doing it, it might be weird in the moment.
It's probably because of how foreign it feels, and then your brain just starts panicking a little bit.
It does feel really foreign because you have like no control of the gun. But even in slow fire where recoil control doesn't matter, for some reason I shoot it like way worse on the off a rest.
You're probably thinking of very black and white then. So like shooting supported off of something just feels absolutely wrong. Unsupported offhand feels correct. That's probably what your brain's doing.
I have no idea. So you guys haven't tried it?
I don't really ever do that.
Only with rifle, because Kevin, like we shot what's that rifle match? We always shoot we shoot together. Clash bash. They always have some kind of like offhand 150-yard shot. When I say offhand, but it's like you can like rest on a T-post or something. You know what I mean? Like you can butt your gun up against a T-post, and in every situation, in any world, like you're going to be better off like bracing against a T-post than you are taking the shot freehand. You remember that stuff?
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, I assume like scale and like weapon system change or whatever, but it's like 150-yard braced with a rifle versus like 40 yards with a handgun. Like it's probably valuable, but like we're also 40 yards is probably the range where you're like, yeah, I can still hit it just fine. I mean,
I
heck,
wonder
Matt
if because like
was
we
shooting
have
us, like Matt was shooting like 80-yard target freestyle. So I mean, like
Six. It was somewhere between 50 and 65.
Yeah.
But I think it's also like, rifles were designed to be shot from prone, and resting on the barricade is like probably as close as you can get to it while standing. But like none of us here shoot our pistols prone. Like it's not like a normal position for us.
Well, at least
So I
not here
wonder
in
if
North.
that's what
At least not here in North Texas.
Are you saying that shooting pistols prone isn't practical? Damn, dude. Hot take.
I didn't say that. I just said we just don't do it. Probably
There's
should
a lot
ask
of
an
things
urban
that I
pro.
don't do. Well, so yeah, it's an interesting topic because I think most of us don't shoot at 40 yards that often. Even in like USPSA, it's pretty like you only see, like you said, you only really see that at bigger matches sometimes.
Yeah. So basically, go practice one reload once, and you'll be really good at shooting 40 yards and over.
Either that or go live in area 2.
All right. Yeah, I don't either.
Well, I do know what's in area 2. I don't think it's a very
Don't tell
popular
it.
topic right now.
Oh, oh God.
They do have some stages with long distance out there, so
I don't want to get banned right now.
why not? It was spice up the podcast.
We're gonna talk about that.
Oh,
You guys can. I don't know enough about it.
But you were just talking about how you hated the air directors.
I said no such thing.
If anyone watched this, you would be in big trouble.
Yeah, us and our
it's a good thing we have
viewers.
0 viewers.
5. We have 5.
That's true.
Well, so assuming we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, I think our next topic is technique experimentation. And so this one I think was a listener question, and it was along the lines of is technique experimentation beneficial? When should you do it? How should you do it? And all the topics related to experimenting with different techniques. So I think we can all agree that our experimentation expert is probably Matt. So I'm going to kick this to you first. What do you think about that?
It's a good thing I just had an ounce of whiskey, didn't it? So, technique experimentation. I think the prime times to do it is if you have the ammo during your off season, and then towards the start of your shooting season, or actually no, more like midway through your shooting season, where you're really experimenting, you're trying to up your speed, and then also get the accuracy gain that follows up behind it. It's pretty much anytime you are trying to pick up speed and also accuracy, because more towards the start of your shooting season, you're trying to establish that baseline, so not exactly the best time. And then as it gets close to the end of your shooting season, let's just say that happens to be the nationals you care about. So for me, in my case, Carry Optics Nats, which is September, right now it's mid-July, probably should slow down on the experiment train for a little while. So raw time champ isn't necessarily the thing that I'm going for. It's more, how am I looking at consistency of my current results? So let's just say grit, right? You're not feeling something is right, or if you have really long digits like me, just maybe sometimes you accidentally end up pressing against your knuckles. Where along this your fingers would it be better to go ahead and place your support hand grip, that kind of thing. How you move around a stage. Maybe you want to mess around with step size as you're shooting on the move, or as you're entering position, exiting position, that kind of thing. It's really just during your off season, and then after you've established your baseline.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense that you wouldn't want to be doing anything too crazy before nationals or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, Coy, it looks like you have something to say. So, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I was gonna say, if nobody makes like an animated thing out of like Matt's little hand movements right there, we'll have missed like one of the best possible things about this podcast. No, same thing as Matt, right? So I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think something that all of us can relate to is we've spent enough time like not getting as much change as we want before, and it has a lot to do with like there's like a balance of like experimentation versus the amount of rage you can handle. And then there's to say it as simply as possible, like I think you have to find what your personal limits are. And what's Tony's username again on whatever?
Lufthansa.
Lufthansa, yeah. So if you go on YouTube, there's a video, and I think it's like how to make GM, and like,
oh, that one's just pick already.
Yeah, just pick already. Yeah, exactly. And he touches on this exact subject, which I found the mentality to be like super easy to understand, even though he's kind of like, I don't know, listening to him talk is like listening to what he got an Oracle muse about about future or something. But it's you have to like find like ways to measure like what you're trying to improve, and then just like fix that thing, and then you have to do as much of it as you can tolerate, because I think you guys would agree, if you did max experimentation, like your scores always look like dog. But if you did zero experimentation, like your scores really never reach like super high levels to to be ultra competitive. So it's like a balancing act. But I think all of us have gotten to the point also where it's like, you know what, this one can be a dumpster as long as I make like a 10-second cut on about this shape of a match, you know what I mean? Like, or if I can make this much gains like on this point distribution, given like some similar arrangement of targets over time, right? Like, it's kind of tough because I think there's a nuance to shooting USPSA that no two matches are the same, and nobody ever just shoots classifiers. But it's like objectively a little tough to say I improved X on this skill because it was presented the same way every single time. Like, but being able to like extrapolate the little experimentations, little tests, I think that's like one of the hugest things. And I like Matt's like super simplest way of saying this, which is for most people it's like they can't even make the time. So like people should be running around with their hair's fucking on fire most of the time, and shooting like their hair's on fire, and getting
safely.
Yeah, safe. But yeah, that's where my head's on it.
What about you, Calvin?
I think if you're like a dum-dum like me, and like you don't really know how to quantify like this experimentation and how it like improves your score or makes it worse, doing like side-by-side video of you versus someone who is like amazing. So some of us who went to Dragon's Cup had the luxury of seeing JJ Rakaza shoot the same stages that we did. And I noticed that literally everything he did was just faster than me. Like every single fucking thing. The only thing he didn't do faster was split. And you realize like splits don't do anything for you. But one thing that really stood out though was the way I reload. And I thought, well, let's fix that, because that's a fairly easy thing to fix compared to everything else. Because oftentimes I would go into position still with my gun down while I'm reloading, because I take longer to do it than a super squad GM guy. So what I essentially did was just find a better angle to reload my gun rather than bring it down how I used to. Because I used to bring my gun down low to make the mag insertion easier, but it added a lot of time to bring the gun back up and ready to fire. So by having the gun closer to my chest, you don't really lose a whole lot of time from the mag pouch to the mag well that way, because it's still a really short travel distance. But it's way faster to get the gun back up and aimed. Do it that way. The negative is with like a Tanfo, it's a little bit harder to be more precise with the magazine insert, but you train that out, and the result is a more favorable reload. So that's kind of what I did. Experimented with just different angles of where I'm putting the gun and make it consistent.
Cool. Yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Please.
I think instead of saying like quantifying when, like how much percentage, like you were saying at the start, like I don't like not knowing how to quantify when and when not to experiment. I think just by setting a date or like by like X month, I'm gonna stop experimenting and just simply shoot consistently. So let's just say your nationals, let's just use production nationals as an example. By the middle of September, I am going to stop experimenting and just simply shoot a match as mindless as possible. I think by setting a specific day, that would simplify it a little bit better.
Yeah, I like the idea of simplifying it. So like, y'all know this, I'm retarded. So I need things to be like as straightforward and concrete as possible. So for me, I need to, like, if I'm going to play around with something or experiment it, I need to know exactly what I'm experimenting and kind of isolate that thing. And that's going to kind of dictate when I do it. So I'm going to give some examples because that probably doesn't make much sense yet. So for as an example, similar to Calvin, I've played around with my reloads a bunch throughout my time in USPSA, and so that's something that I've kind of ended up doing something similar to Calvin also, I think, where it's kind of like a high and close to the chest reload, because I found that gives me the most consistency. So I did all of that experimentation on gun placement and reloading. I did all of that in dry fire, and then I try to just make it automatic so it happens in live fire and it matches. So you're not going to find me experimenting with reload technique at a match. On the other side, when this goes back to when I was monkeying around in carry optics during the off season, and I found out that, like, wow, I'm not even competitive on time or even close compared to the mats and the other local carry optics hot shots. So that's going to be something where obviously I tried to push speed a lot in practice then, but I also did some experimentation on trying to go faster in matches too, just because I had the immediate data of like, okay, what was their time and what was my time? Like, am I even in the ballpark? So that's something where I thought there was value in doing experimentation in an actual match. And so to give a little more detail, I think, like I said, I need things very concrete, not abstract ideas. So it's easy to just say go faster, just make the time happen. But if you're an idiot like I am, I need that spelled out. So for me, what I found out was a lot of the time that I was losing was confirmation. And I don't think at my skill level, and by confirmation, I mean like sight confirmation on the target. I don't think for my skill level, I would have called it over confirming, because I was shooting relatively good points. And then when I started experimenting with confirming less, the points fell off fast. So, but I do think it helped me get to the next level of being able to shoot, all things being equal, being able to shoot with a lower level of confirmation and still get the, ballpark 90% of points for the match. So, my point being, I didn't just go into the match and say like, oh, I'm going to run around like crazy and go really fast and just make the time happen. For me personally, that's effectively what I was trying to do, but I had to tell myself, be extremely aggressive on the aiming. So confirm substantially less than you feel comfortable, and kind of experiment and see what happens. And the reason, and you can do that in practice, and you should do that in practice too, but the reason I was found value in doing that at a match was because, again, you have the data of just like, okay, how did that compare to the carry optic M's and GMs that are at the match?
No, I'm with you there. Would you, I think it's a good idea to have a solid baseline before you start experimenting, because if you're level 1 at everything, like RPG game level 1, like you just started, you have like no stats, like it doesn't make sense to just try a bunch of wild shit because like nothing's gonna work. So like I wouldn't try shooting confirmation 2 targets with confirmation 1 if you can't hold a gun and make those shots standing still, without a timer. And then like with the whole like movement thing, I'm not gonna try to move on a tight partial if I can't even hit it standing still. But there, after taking the JJ class, I would definitely, took more risk than I normally would have just to see what would happen. But I made sure that my grip and my body structure could support the shooting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I want to say, kind of in more of like USPSA terms, if you're not like a ballpark A class or better, then you probably are better off just kind of trusting the process and following, the standard shooting advice, and just continuing to improve. And then maybe once you get A class or better, you'll find some value in kind of starting to play around with things and see what works specifically for you, and even just seeing where stuff breaks so that you can try to get to the next level. Because sometimes you're not actually changing your tech. Like with sight confirmation, I wouldn't say that I was changing my technique. I was just trying to like, okay, when do the wheels fall off, and how do I go that fast without having them fall off?
Corey, you looked like you had something that you were giggling about.
No, it was just, so I know Calvin doesn't play any fucking video games, so like him making the video game example is kind of fucking funny.
It was the first that came to mind.
Yeah, you like that Final Fantasy, don't you?
I did play Final Fantasy back in the day. FF6 was the best.
I think he plays like hentai games or something, right?
Yeah.
How does that even work?
Oh God.
There's a will, there's a where, Calvin.
Here we go.
I just want you guys to know, so if you do play video games or not, so you go on Steam, right? Everyone's buying their video games on Steam. Turn off that adult filter. See what kind of shit you see on Steam.
I'm scared. I don't have a PC anymore.
We'd like to start a GoFundMe for Calvin's hentai PC.
It's very generous.
Now I'm scared. I'm scared to Google search this, but it seems different.
Just share your screen on the podcast while you Google search.
Yeah, I know, right?
He's gonna have a really buff arm
like,
after 3 months.
Is it like an RPG?
Jesus.
Or are they like FPS games, but you're not shooting? Well, I guess you could be shooting.
You'll find out.
I'm trying to figure out how this shit works.
Should we move it on?
Yeah, I don't think we had anything. Oh, you know what we did? So here's a follow-up question to this. That's actually on topic. So kind of goes along the same lines, but do you have a different approach to level 1, level 2, or level 3 matches as it relates to experimenting or otherwise? So let's go around this circle in the same order. So Matt.
Level ones, absolutely feel free to experiment. If it looks like your buddies know that you're experimenting around, then like don't worry about their reactions unless they're like, hey, this is what I noticed when you were going balls out, that kind of thing. Level 2s, you might want to start being concerned, especially if it's a prize match, right? Because who doesn't want to walk away with a $3,000 gun?
Apparently you don't.
Yeah, apparently,
Yeah.
and I didn't freaking know. So, I didn't know I had to be present.
So you have to leave it early.
Yeah, right. That's what I get for missing out on $3,000 free. And then level 3s, you're probably need to look at, hey, full consistency of results, unless you understand how to read scores. If you understand how to read scores, then you know how you can push on stages that you have strengths in. Otherwise, full consistency results.
Math is way too hard to be doing that on the fly.
Well, maybe for you, maybe if not for the other 3 of us.
It definitely
I don't
is
do
for
that
me. All right, Coy, what about you? Level 1 versus 2 versus 3. What do you think?
Generically, like, there's not really like a sliding scale for me. If I like mentally treat a match really more seriously, then I do what Matt was saying and try to shore up, like, if you start to get experiment and you have like kind of a range of results that you can get, right? So if I shot the same match 10 times in a row, I'm experimenting really good if the range for my results is getting pretty wide. And I'm experimenting none if like the range of my results is really closed in. So if I shot it, the same 6 stages 100 times in a row, then I would get the same result like within a pretty narrow margin. I just try to close in the margin for matches I consider to be really important, whether they're 2s or 3s or whatever, or even 1s, right? And I think that's probably the way most people do it. I think I'm saying it this way too because it's going to seem a little weird, but I feel like the thing for me recently has been like letting myself just like open up the range on like 2s and 3s. Just because the kind of stuff you see at levels in 2s and 3s, depending on your like local area, can be wildly different.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Calvin?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, but it also depends on whether you're trying to win or whether you're trying to learn. Because like what Koi said, level 2s and 3s can have vastly different challenges than your level 1 matches. They're usually more difficult. And if you go in with the mindset knowing that you're not going to win anyway, and you're willing to try to experiment, I don't see a problem with experimenting at level 2 or 3 either. Because I've done it.
I think if you know that you're out of the running, then experimenting at level 2s and 3s is pretty much whatever.
Just like some leading indicators, right? So if you're like already MGM and you're like winning your section matches and stuff like that, it's like you should probably be dialed in going into it. But for everybody else, it's like it's probably okay to have the range a little loose.
Yeah.
I agree with that. The only exception I can think of is even if you're not in the running to actually win, I think a lot of guys do care about like their placement. So if you're let's say you're at the top level of B class or something, you don't want to lose to a bunch of C class dudes and stuff like that. So I think I would say it's up to you. I don't think just because you're in the running to win, you should just go hair on fire. Or just because you're not in the running to win. I think it just depends on what you want for that match.
Yeah, because you could be like the top B guy, but you're in that space where you want to like beat all the A's and you just want to like do some crazy shit.
Hey man, first place B class is first place B class.
I've never made first place B class.
Neither have I.
But yeah, and even if you don't care, like the stupid, I probably will piss people off, but the stupid like class placement things are retarded. But so let's just assume you don't care about winning B class or something. You might care about like, oh, that guy normally beats me. I want to get as close to him as I can, or I want to try to beat him or something. So I think even if you're not going to win, it's still okay to care about where you end up and not experiment. But you should also give yourself permission to experiment if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, it just depends on what you want. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule.
Yeah. So for me, with some exceptions, generally I approach all matches, regardless of level, the same. And I think part of that is because I kind of consider consistent, like reliable match performance is a skill in and of itself. So if you think of like, if you're constantly just hair on fire, experimenting, or just not caring, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is in your case, if you're always doing that type of thing at level 1 matches, and then the level 2 match that you care about for the year rolls around and you're like, okay, now is the time to take this seriously, I think you're going to have a bad time, because then pressure's on and you don't have a bunch of practice dealing with it. On the flip side of that, though, is if you treat every level 1 match like it's nationals, then I don't think you get the benefit of experimenting like we've talked about. So I think there's some wiggle room there, especially for level 1 matches. Like I said, I've done some crazy stuff at level 1s before, but I also think don't discount the practice that you get having that match pressure on. But the match pressure is only going to be there if you put it on yourself. So if you go into every level 1 and even level 2 not caring about where you end up, then you're not getting that practice of pressure. You're just giving yourself the out of like, oh, I was experimenting or whatever. So not that you should always do this, but I do think there's some value in practicing where it's like, okay, I really care about this match for whatever reason. Put the pressure on yourself and make sure that the results happen. And if they don't, it's not the end of the world. It just gives you a learning experience. Like, okay, what can I do better next time? But you're not going to have that learning experience if you don't put the pressure on sometimes.
But you also have to know when to give your mind a break.
Yep. I think there's value in doing both, depending on what match it is, what part of your season it is, blah blah blah.
Well, I mean, I wasn't necessarily meaning that. Like, going back to what you said about, like, hey, what if you treated every single level 1 like nationals, right? Sometimes there are just matches where, like, hey, you know what? Boys in town, okay, came up from Houston. I just want to shoot, have fun with the guy, right? So just give it, like, even shooting like that to give your mind a break is something that's a little bit important. If your brain works that way.
I agree.
Can you imagine like just being a lame ass and like mailing it in at like 70% every match? It'd be horrible.
Well, even if you're not mailing it in, like you might be going 100%, but you're 100% practicing crazy sight pictures that you wouldn't normally let yourself get away with or something. It's like, and I think there's value in doing that, because you basically, when you do that, you pretty much give yourself permission to have dumpster fires, because you're kind of seeing what happens. But if you're always giving yourself permission to have dumpster fires, then when the one match rolls around where you don't want to have any dumpster fires, it's like crushing pressure on top of you. So, I think you need to practice managing that pressure as well as practicing experimenting.
It's true.
Well, so that's all I had to say on these couple topics. Do you guys have anything else?
No.
I had like Forrest Gump vibes from you when you said that, Snow. And
Oh,
that's all I
gosh.
have to say about that.
I don't think that's a compliment, but
Who's talking about? Forrest Gump is a national treasure.
oh,
Well, I
thank you,
mean, we
Dan.
are going back to Alabama for nationals, so yeah.
Yeah, good luck. That's a very fun place to go. They have
Make sure to
over
stop by Little Caesars.
they have over 2 fast food restaurants that stay open.
I don't know about you guys. I went to sushi while I was there, so
That's very brave of you. Very brave of you.
I also went to Cracker Barrel like 5 times, so even out.
We went to Popeyes and got laughed out of the drive-thru, so that was cool.
Why? Because you were in Talladega and there were ethnics in the car?
No, because we had the audacity to go through the drive-thru within an hour of them closing.
Did we also try to go to McDonald's and they weren't serving?
Yep.
Yeah.
What kind of McDonald's doesn't serve all the time?
Maybe
That
they
was
just
our
weren't serving
question,
our
too.
kind.
Oh, well. Well, so I don't have anything else, boys. But y'all got any other topics that you want to throw out there? Any 40-yard shooting
good.
tips? Are we all good for tonight?
I don't know. At this point, I think Calvin just needs to start clapping.
I'm holding on for
Yay!
There we go.